Hello everyone, welcome to Coffee Cup Enlightenment. Today I'm going to talk about how to get rid of depression. And before I even start, it needs to be noted that the notion of getting rid of depression would kind of imply that we are depressed, and what we want to do is I don't know, make us undepressed. But this is not true. What I'm going to explain in this video is the mechanics of depression, and once you understand it, you'll see the truth that who we are in our essence is incapable of being depressed. Who we are is the awareness, and the awareness is the one that witnesses the depression object or content. And like in most of the videos, I'm going to use this cup to represent us as awareness. And even though I've used this as an object, awareness is not an object, it's contentless. It's the awareness of content. So these are content, but it itself is not a content. So that's why it's said in thousands of years of ancient scriptures, like the Tao that can be named is not the Tao, because as soon as you give it a name, you've reduced it to a content, and then that's not it. So basically, it has it's contentless awareness. That's our essence, and without this awareness, it can also be described as a way as it's like air. The awareness is like air, and it enables content to exist in the air space. Without the air and the space, there would be content cannot manifest and exist. And this itself can bring to a meditation to the very profound realization that how important awareness and consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, is. Because without it, it's like the saying, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it actually fall? Does the tree actually fall? And so what that sort of implies is without awareness as a witness to be there, nothing can manifest, nothing can exist, no content can exist. It requires awareness and space first as primary, and then all content can manifest in that space. So getting back to how do we get rid of depression. First of all, depression pretty much starts from birth. So everyone's got depression. Depression is the origin of depression is as soon as the words I, me, and my come into where the awareness identifies with these words. This is birth, which is I'll put this aside for now. This is birth, which is a self. So all of a sudden there's awareness, but it's not aware of itself as just contentless awareness. And then pretty much within the first few months of birth, or maybe 6 months to a year, as soon as language is learned and the words I, me, and my, and then this pops into the perception of consciousness, which is a self. It's an individual, and it is separate from everything. Whereas this awareness is everything. It's the space that enables everything. And because it's not content, it is everything. It is so basically, once this self is birthed, that is depression. As soon as you have an individualistic conceptual self, which ultimately is illusionary, because this is who you are, which is the awareness of the self, the conceptual self. So this is the first birth and the seed of depression, which is an individual sense of self. And then, and I guess within the first maybe up to probably around 3 years old or something, this part comes in. This is pretty much one and the same. I've broken it up into 2 cups just to sort of give it a bit more clarity and definition. But what this does, these two have a relationship. So this is the body of the self, and at birth it's by about 2 to 3 years old, it's starting to layer images of itself, of who it thinks it is. And not much happens, not many layers happen at that young age. It probably happens a little bit more later in life, maybe 7 years old. I'm to this, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm whatever. These images start coming in, maybe around 10 years old, 11, 12. The images start building up even more, and they can become quite intense. And then into adulthood, they really start manifesting and layering upon each other, layer upon layer, and form a very dense self. And this is where all the reactions and actions, the great extent of actions come out from within us. They actually come from this self. They don't come from awareness yet, because the awareness is unrecognized yet. The awareness is just looking at this pretty much for decades, and it's not aware of itself as just content awareness yet. It is mesmerized by this body of self, which has good images to it, bad images to it, all layered. And there's infinite combinations and configurations of these layers, which manifest the personalities, as it's described as. And basically getting back to this again, so this part, what it does, it has a relationship with the body of the self, and it condemns, it criticizes. Pretty much this is like the chatter of the mind, and the awareness is also identified with this chattering, commenting entity. It thinks it is this one that's judging and resisting. It resists. Awareness is incapable of resistance. Awareness sees resistance. It's like in the animal kingdom. There is no animal that resists. Animals act in certain instinctual ways for survival, but it's not the same as the psychological based resistance that humans have, which in the animal kingdom, it's sort of like a neutral response that doesn't come from any thoughts and thinking about the situation. It's just a direct response to the situation. So there's no psychological elements affecting the animal's decision. It just does what it needs to do instinctually and neutrally to direct situations. Whereas what people have a tendency to do is when this commentary happens, it makes emotions, and then this emotions is experienced in the field, and then out of that emotions people act. It doesn't come from the situation that their actions mostly are coming from. It is coming from an emotional sensation in their field of consciousness, which is generated from the commentator and the resistor. So this thing, it resists, it makes judgments, and our awareness is incapable of making judgments. More on that, it can make judgments as same as the animal kingdom in a neutral way, in a direct situational response way, but there needs to be distinction between, there's 2 different types of judgments. One's just a direct response to the situation, and the other one's a response to the emotional, and there's endless distortions to this judgment. Whereas when you're responding to a situation, it's very simple. It's just direct. This is what you do, and it's done. But with the judgmental realm, there's unlimited distortions and unlimited pathways on where you can be pushed and persuaded into doing things. And it's not really it's not the, to say it's not effective would be an understatement. It's really a response to it's a response to the emotion. It's not response to the situation. So it's not really a genuine interaction with life, and you're not really truly free to interact with life in its direct circumstances. So getting back to this, these two have a relationship, and awareness is mesmerized by both of these. This makes comments, and it thinks it is the one making the comment, the awareness, because it's not aware of itself yet. And this adds more layers to the body of self, and then you can say the depression grows. It gets more and more and creates more emotions in the field of consciousness. And sorry, I just lost my train of thought. And really, when this body of self is during its early stages in life, the desire to bring awareness to it and have self-realization is very insignificant and minor. That for this self-realization to occur yet, it's only until this body of self really grows and gets really big, you can say that it's more easier for depression then to dissolve, because it becomes very blatantly obvious its growth of the depression, and the bigger it is, you can say the more easy it is to for it to disappear. If it's only subtle and small, then you won't even notice it. It's just, it hasn't got any distinction to it yet, and it's still blended in with consciousness, the awareness identifying with it. So it's only till it starts to really grow and become prolific, there's an opportunity then for the awareness to look at it. And one of the ways this depression can go is, number one, is first to see that this body of self, that we make it a rule if it need be, that to say that just to believe, even though it doesn't have a validity and a truth to it at the moment, it's just to recognize that it is impossible for the awareness that we are to be depressed. There's so much commentary made. Yeah, there's so much commentary made where it says I am depressed, and then what happens is this character here that makes all the judgments, it then tries to fix the depression, and you think that you're the fixer, and this only keeps it growing even further. And if you also say I am the depressed one, not only does it encourage the fixer, but it also creates an identification. If you say I am this, then you're forgetting that you're not, that you're actually this. So this is why it's very important to say, as the Buddhists say, like even with anger, there is anger within me, which is this, but I am not anger. So you can sense it and feel it. It's coming in the field of your consciousness, but it's very important not to identify with it, because when the truth eventually comes, realize that you're the awareness, and these disappear, and that becomes a self-evident truth, then you'll realize all those times where that was said, I am depression, I am this, I am that, you'll see that it's false, because what's left is just awareness. So one of the techniques to dissolving depression is number one and critically important is not to identify and say it's me, it's I that it is depressed, and then see if it's possible to look at the depression in such a way, even if you close your eyes, and look at the sensation of this depressed body, and just notice it. And if there's one that's making judgments about what you're paying attention to and noticing, that's this. So, and if you identify with this, it can distract you from becoming aware and disidentifying from the body of depression. So whatever commentary comes in, any resistance that comes in about what you're looking at, about the depressed body of self, notice that as well. Look at that. Look at the judgment and the resistance. And this here is what keeps humans in identified states for decades and even for a lifetime. It's because it's this secondary part, this commentary, that it's equated that I am the one that's resisting, I am the one that's judging, and then I am depressed. It's all this identification going on instead of witnessing what's going on. So number two, probably the best way to get rid of depression is really is taking on an attitude of not minding. Because really, once all this is gone, say this eventually did all go, and there was just blissful, peaceful awareness, you also see that because there's no more commentator anymore and resistance and all that, what you already are the not minder of things, and because there's nothing left anyway to mind, and if anything, it was only this thing that was minding itself. So this thing fights itself. It attacks itself, and then when the awareness comes in to look at the depressed self and notice that there is depression, this thing will actually swap sides and try to fix it. And then when you identify with yourself as the fixer, you're only keeping the situation. So it's always either attacking or trying to fix one or the other. So it's very important to become aware of this part of this conceptual self that's doing things. It's the doer of things. It wants things. It's trying to change things. It doesn't want what is, and it most certainly doesn't want its own aspect of itself. And the reason why all this goes on, it's ultimately, although this can't be experienced just by hearing these words, all this is neutral. This is all just a projection coming from because we don't recognize ourselves as awareness. The more identification with this happens, the more intense these things interact with each other. The less we know ourselves awareness, the more these things interact with each other and grow even more. But the paradox of it is the bigger it gets, the more obvious it becomes. And it also has been described as this is like a sinking ship. If you don't get off it, then it'll kill you, kill the body, because this thing is it's it eventually create such a depressed self, and then it'll attack it, and then it'll say, look how bad I am, and then you identify that it's you saying, look how bad I am, and then it just keeps the identification going more, and then it'll feed the depression even more, and then it could actually take action such as like suicide and that. And some people, when they reach suicide point, that's the pinnacle point, when death is imminent. That sometimes some people during suicide, it's happened very frequently, that this becomes exposed. And then there's many accounted stories where people are on the brink of suicide, and then this thing becomes so intense and so blatantly obvious, suddenly this identification with the awareness steps up and sees, I'm not this, I'm that. And this thing starts to rattle and shake, and it disappears. And then also what's left, the body of the depressed self, this goes with it. And that causes self-realization. And then when self-realization occurs and this whole theatrical play disappears, it becomes evidently proof that this was just neutral. It was just an expression. It's a projection coming from your lack of awareness of yourself as awareness. And this is all innocent. It's neutral. So that's why, if number one is look at all the commentary. Number one, don't identify with either the body of the depressed self or the one that fixes it or attacks itself or whatever. It comes up with infinite strategies, but it's all corresponding to bring awareness to this. everything that happens in this theatrical play is a perfect correspondingness of the pieces of consciousness that are waiting to be discovered. When certain aspects of awareness are discovered, when you've noticed a particular aspect of this commentator, then that particular part of that commentary doesn't happen anymore, and it will go into a different form of commentary, a different form of action, and then eventually you'll see that as well, and that'll bring more awareness and realization to this. And the more greater the awareness, the more easy it is to see this. So at the start, it seems like it is quite distracted. You'll be immediately taken over by the new play of commentary and actions from this thing, and you identify with it maybe for a few months, and then eventually you'll see, it's happened again, and your awareness will become aware of that, and then this will have to come up with a new game plan, a new strategy. But it's not doing it all deliberately. It's only doing it because, as I said, it's like a projection that's coming from your lack of awareness of yourself as awareness. If you were fully aware, these wouldn't be able to exist. They disappear. These two only exist because you don't know who you are yet. If you knew who you are, this whole theatrical play would disappear in an instant. It's gone. So that's why it is innocent, these things. So number 2 is see if you can not mind. It's very powerful, even though this thing keeps you identified with it as the minder, as the resistor. See if you can pay attention to this one and not mind this. Not mind the depressed image. It's just images. It's not you. This isn't you. Who cares how much it talks? It's not you. Who cares how much body of depression is built up over the years? It's not you. So that's just sort of painting a picture of this not minding. What does it truly matter? If you know these two are not you, what does it matter? Thank you.